We was really raving. We was really doing the running man at 100 miles an hour while trying to talk to a girl who's also doing the running man. It was like, dance was everything. Some young people saw it and was, oh, this looks interesting. Let's just set it on fire. So they set the bus on fire.
Way.
Yeah, this is where the music's changing now, because now there's a celebratory element to killing people.
In this episode of Safe, there'll be references made to violence and loss of life. So please listen and watch with care. When you were growing up, how did you keep safe?
There's a lot of safety elements that were incremented before we were aware of them, if that makes sense. So have to hark back to the era of my parents, mum and my dad, whatnot. That era had to deal with a lot of visceral racism, a lot of heavy-handed policing, sus law, etc. So the area that I was born into was an area in Brent called Harlesden. And Harlesden at the time was predominantly white area. A lot of racism, a lot of mods, rockers, etc. Used to always hear this word, the mods, the rockers. Never meant nothing to me by the time I was growing up. That was because our parents done a lot of the work in terms of ensuring our safety. Mm-hmm. That meant a lot of fights, a lot of community organizing to keep other elements of the community safe. So my dad would say that if you're a young black person or an old black person, you saw a black person across the road walking, you immediately banded together and walked with that person, whether you knew them or not. So that really enforced a lot of communication and the bounded lines that used to be there. So if you was from Jamaica, Dominica, Nigeria, doesn't matter where you was from, you were black. So you had to bond together. So that kind of community tightness and that kind of robustness within the community of fighting racist eventually meant that there was a flight of a lot of, white elements that moved further out, Watford, whatnot, Bushy, they moved further out of the local areas. So by the time I was coming up as a child, my area was relatively safe. So when people talk about racism, I didn't see it from a day-to-day level, obviously state-wise, institutional-wise, yeah, that exists. But the day-to-day visceral racism or unsafety, we didn't really see that. So that was one element. Then you've got the other element that the state at that point was providing a lot of money to youth clubs, play centres, play schemes, schemes that would take young people from every area within Brent away for weekenders, weeks, abseiling, learning crafts, doing different things in different spaces around the UK and really exposing more things to us inner city children. So more the outdoors, more canoeing and things like that. And then they return you to your space, that your respective spaces. Now you're mixing with different young people from other parts of Brent, from Kilburn, South Kilburn, from Wembley, from Stonebridge. So all the time you're communicating and mingling with different people. So when you came back from those trips, the legacy of it meant you made friends. So now you get on your bike, ET style 80s, ride into another person's area and meet them up. And, those friendship groups were built on. So the whole of the safety element from the state, it was a lot more safety provisions in terms of a lot of funding for youth provision. But also our parents done us a massive job ensuring our physical safety, and meaning that we didn't have to interact with racism as much in predominantly black and brown communities.
Mm-hmm. Where did music come into that? Because I'm sure it was ever present.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a child of Jamaican parents. And if you've ever been to Jamaica, you'll understand that music leaks out of every single space. It comes out of a bush. It comes from a guy riding up the hill on his bike.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There's music from every single little space in Jamaica. And true to Jamaicans, not just Jamaicans, but a lot of the Caribbeans, I find that wherever they go, their music follows. So growing up as a child in the 80s, 90s, whatnot, music was the soundtrack of my entire life. So before I really knew what music I liked, my parents were just, Dennis Brown and reggae music. That was a constant in my household, Then my bigger sister was really into soul music. She gets into Whitney Houston and Madonna and all the likes of. So then pop's introduced to me in that way. The massive Michael Jackson fan, obviously in the 80s, whatnot. So music plays like an integral part at that point towards development. But the landscape of music was vast, from reggae to pop to just whatever. Jamaica's well known for that. you can be in a Jamaican party and then George Michael, Wake Me Up Before We Go, Come a Karma Chameleon, do you know what I mean? Like these kind of songs will come in between a Bob Marley classic or between a Dennis Brown or Sanchez, or have you not? They're as much as Jamaican folklore as any of the other artists. If Celine Dion, I always joke, if she actually wanted to run for presidency in Jamaica, prime minister, she would win by a landslide. Like she's a legend over there. So in terms of music, it was a really fixed part of our childhood. And then once we started to develop as young men, R&B became a massive thing for us. So R&B baby, you know, I had sound systems and turntables from a young person, from a young age. I actually done my first rave at 15 years of age. Done our first summer rave with me and my friends, you know, talking about 500 young people from all different schools attending. And that was us as 15-year-olds, you know what I mean? So music's always been at a cornerstone of my childhood and my adulthood.
And as you kind of grew up, obviously the sounds of London evolved as well.
When you said that, immediately what came to my mind was Sade. Do you know what I mean? Like, and being young for Sade, but firstly having a crush, like, wow, she's gorgeous. But secondly, just the sound. Do you know what I mean? Like not being able to place it anywhere. It was a very international sound. I forgot that Sade was actually English.
Yeah.
Because she was massive in America as well. So she was just this big pop star. And then what kind of strikes me as more us would have been like Soul to Soul and What's the Meaning of Life. That kind of identity forming, you know, that kind of reggae infusion with soul, etc. Those are like massive songs that really start to craft an identity for us here in the UK, but not just on a local level, but internationally.
Yeah.
And then you've got like, obviously I grew up with Smiley Culture, massive reggae artists here in the UK. Do you know what I mean? Making he made so much classics, to be fair, that we just grew up underneath, School Time, Granny, etc. But this is what I mean. These kind of artists pioneering from Jamaica, etc., but also with a British identity, it starts to transmute who we are, how we're going to impact the music space where we live, if that makes sense. And then jungle music was massive for me. Just having that kind of reggae representation within drum and bass was just huge. And enough of the classics that were big in drum and bass, we knew them as classics from house parties, you know, that I grew up in. So jungle was huge. And then obviously that morphs into garage, which then segues into grime, which then morphs where we are today in terms of hip hop music, / drill, and soul music. There's a resurgence of UK soul artists who are big in the international scene now as well, and locally. So yeah, that was our childhood.
I often say I'm jealous of, like, I feel like the prime was that like late 90s, like mid to late 90s. And I was just a child then. I always feel jealous of people slightly older who got to enjoy that.
I'd love to tell you that you didn't miss out, but you did. Like you really did. Like we was really raving. We was really doing the Running Man at 100 miles an hour while trying to talk to a girl who's also doing the Running Man. It was like dance was everything. You know, you when you went out at that point as a child, we was going to day raves. You know, it's called all dayers. So we'll go to day raves all over, Tudor Road, South London, wherever they were, we went. And it was just literally hundreds of school children from all over London meeting up, and you're raving. There is no phones, there's no camera phones. So who's got the most colorful clothing? Who's got the latest bogle? Who knows how to drop the latest dance move? That sort of thing. So that was, a lot of our childhood was spent dancing and dancing really hard. Do you know what I mean? So it was a great time.
It makes sense that given your journey ever since, which we'll talk about in a sec. At some point you become a bus driver. I know we're probably skipping a few years, but 2016 is a year that everything changed for you. Just talk me through like the years building up to that. You're obviously driving a bus, but what changed in that period for you to kind of bring us up to this more modern era in your life?
I've worked so many different jobs. So even before the bus driving job, weird enough, I was a prison officer as well. And it was just one of those jobs I weren't really curious about at all. But because I've always been in the community, I've always been of service to the community in the shape of mentoring without knowing you're mentoring. You're chatting to young people all the time. What are you doing that for? Hold on, who are you in beef with? Why are you in beef with that person? Hold on a minute, I know my man. So you're always doing that job. No one's paying you. It's just what you got to do to keep your community safe, right? And I've learned from my parents, particularly my dad and that, in terms of community safety. So I was always of service to the community, and dealing with a lot of the young people that I was, prison became almost like a rite of passage for a lot of the young working class black boys that were around me. And I'm chatting to them, but they've just come out of prison. So now you're in catch up mode. And now you're trying to catch up for the few years that you've missed. So they're hard to speak to at this point. So when I used to speak to my youngers in particular, they'll be like, you know what, if you was in jail, we'll probably listen to you because we can't do anything. We're in jail. That's when I became curious about the prison job. So Feltham specifically. So I thought, right, let me go down that route and then work with young people and then see if I can be of service to young people in there, which worked for a bit. It was a culture shock because I've never been to prison. And then there's the age gap, you know? So my sons are at that age. Well, just a bit younger than some of the young people that were going in and out of prison. So whereas I was doing the family thing and I was away from, moved away, etc., and doing just, incubated family, I was not really privy to a lot of the social issues that were happening in my local community. So working with the youngers and then going into the prison sector, it was like, whoa, do you know what I mean? Like it seemed like everything had gone upside down. So the shifts in terms of morality, things that were now honourable, that in my era wouldn't have been seen as honourable, etc. So it took me a little while to get up to speed and to realize, okay, there are similarities. It's just that we had a generation of older men that were incarcerated, some for a long time, some move away from the community, etc. So that mentoring from someone slightly older than you, or could be that in between, they knew your dad or your mum, so they'll just naturally mentor you. A lot of that mentorship, leadership had been taken away. So now young people were more or less governing young people. So they haven't got the experience to say, no, hold on a minute, let's get down to the bottom of that issue. Everyone's in the same issue together, side by side, if that makes sense. So the Feltham experience was a huge learning curve for me, but it's also where I launched a number of programs. One of them was a music program. The music program was the most over-attended workshop that we had. But after Feltham and teaching assistant, etc., I said, I need a job which just pays. Do you know what I mean? And that's when I got into bus driving.
Right, okay.
So that's where I became a London bus driver, got into management a little bit, do you know what I mean? But just enjoyed driving. It was like a meditation space for me. No phones, no one talks to me. People come on and off your bus, do you know what I mean? But it just gave me a lot of time to actually think. And in that thinking space is where a lot of my ideas developed for what's now seen as United Borders. But just being able to think and really, what do I want to do? How do I want to do it, if that makes sense? At the same time, earn a weekly wage. The bus industry pays you weekly. So, do you know what I mean? It was really convenient for me. Plus, I like movement. I don't like office jobs. I don't like sitting down clock watching. When you're on the road, you just got to negotiate traffic, people, etc. You got to get from one end to the other end. And time seems to go quicker, if that makes sense. Whereas sitting down in a space and observing time weren't for me. So that's how I got into bus driving.
We've got 6 more episodes coming later this year. So hit subscribe wherever you listen and watch to make sure you don't miss out on them. After becoming a bus driver, you start United Borders.
Yeah.
Tell me about that time. Like what was the moment? What was the inspiration point for that?
Right. So United Borders as a domain name, I probably bought it 10 years prior to that. So I always wanted to launch United Borders, a community service of some sort. At that point, I didn't know what I wanted it to be. I just bought the domain name, just what you did at that time, buy domain names. You'll do a venture at some point. But then at that point, there was a young person from my mum's estate in Church Road called James Owusu, who unfortunately was gunned down on his doorstep. So a young person that was an aspiring DJ, but also a part-time business student, and also looked after his mum, who had health challenges. So amongst the community, he was someone that was well known and respected, because a young person taking on caring duties as well as pursuing university and still having that creativity for music, etc.
Yeah,
that's someone that we all kind of respect around the way. And then him being murdered the way he was murdered, it left the area very cold, and it was very much like, well, if James can be killed in that way, what does that say for any child now? Do you know what I mean? So that's when I thought, right, I need to start something I got to really start United Borders and impact both sides of this conflict. I was quite clear on that. And I suppose at the time it wasn't seen favorable from people within my local community, because it was like, well, why are you working with that side. And I'm like, well, if you're not working with both sides, you're not working with any. So you have to work in different groups, but you also have to understand that both groups are marginalized. Both groups are also victim. Victim and perpetrator takes on different roles within each person, depending on the level of trauma, right? So that's when I launched United Borders. And then the idea was, buy a double-decker bus from my company, as you do, just buy a bus. And then at that time, I was working with my friend who's also a producer, Emma on the beats. So, and then we was coordinating our efforts with a guy called Stephen Graham, who does a lot of mentoring, but he does a lot of gang work. And the idea was to work with both sets of young people from both sides who are kind of in that, who are exposed to youth violence and might be making decisions which could be challenging for the local community. So that's where we started. And the bus gave us mobility. It meant we was able to work with this side and work with that side. So then it was like, well, how do we get them to work together? That started through the music side of it. So we'll do music production with Church Road in the morning, and then we'll do like creating beats, and then we'll go to another side, Stonebridge, and get them to jump on the beats and rap on them. So then there was working together.
A sneaky maneuver.
Very sneaky, one bang. So then Stonebridge, same thing, would be over there, the music production with them, take those tracks back to Church Road and say, oh yeah, I produced some beats last night. And then they jump on the tracks. So then we continue that for like 2 weeks solid. And then at the end of those 2 weeks, we kind of exposed, look guys, you've been making music together. So how about we call a, kind of not a truce, but like a meeting where you guys would be making music and come together. And they reluctantly agreed. But that's when we got the bus down to Stonebridge. The guys that were there, were cool. They allowed the Church Road guys to come in. We was there for the entire day making music. We got Barclays Life Skills to sponsor that coming together. So that really highlighted to me the power of music and how we can utilize the power of music to kind of heal long-standing rifts. So it's not a utopia, but it just shows that there is a willingness. We can get people to kind of work together if we set around the same, the safeguardings in place, the right players are in place. It can happen. And I expected more to come out of that. So I took the findings back to Brent Council at the time. So look, we've got this happening. We've got Stonebridge Church Road. They've been feuding for a long time. We really want to deepen this and expand on it. And they was like, oh, well, austerity. What's that? Sounds nice. Yeah, we'll have some of that. No, you won't. That means cuts to youth services. So we've got to make, I think it was £100 million worth of cuts to youth services first. So it was like, oh, austerity's not good then. No, it's terrible. It's what we're going to have to do in order to keep other services alive within Brent. We've got to strip youth services. So this was, 2016.
And I suppose that, thinking back to what you were saying about growing up with a lot of youth services for yourself, that obviously generationally presents a very different landscape for young people. And I often feel like the 2010s were like this, being a teenager during that time of those cuts, although it can be this like abstract kind of finance sheet that people are chopping those numbers from. The lived reality, if you're suddenly not receiving that service compared to your parents or elder cousins or whatever, it's very lived, right? It's a very real thing that you're suddenly not experiencing and not having. And I suppose that's why having a bus space or any space like the one that you created was so important during the mid-2010s.
Yeah, make you right. I mean, I've done a few interviews during that period of time, and I call it cuts crime, because we know knife crime, but we don't know cuts crime as a crime, but it exasperates crime. So anything that fuels an epidemic of violence should be held accountable, irrespective of which party is responsible. We have to look at, who's done this and why have they done it? And if this is now the outcome of that, which is increased unsafety for young people, we're marginalizing spaces for them to be. So now they have to hang out in the streets in order to still communicate. But then that increases police targeting and stop and search and etc. As we've seen what the numbers are. These are all things that makes communities unsafe. And the police will say, well, the community's not working with us, they're not responding well to us. The community is like, the police are over searching us, they're being heavy-handed with their tactics, etc. But all the time, the factors behind all of those things been removed. So now it's just community police. What about the funding? What about the councils? What about the governments? So we have to put all of those things in place when we measure serious youth violence, where I feel that a lot of serious youth violence is really looking at the other end of it. Young people have done this, but what happened prior to that?
Yeah. And over those years then, from creating that space on the bus, that evolves into something quite beautiful. Obviously, we're nearly a decade later now. How did that grow as an idea, that the bus, like what kind of reputation did it take on amongst local young people? And then presumably further than that, you're working with increasing numbers of young people. So just tell me about that growth and how that bus became really special.
Well, initially, like I said, that spark where I saw the two young people from Food in the States come together was that wow moment.
Yeah.
And we were high off of that. And then that bus got burnt down. So yeah, that bus broke down outside of a village. Some young people saw it and was, oh, this looks interesting. Let's just set it on fire. So they set the bus on fire.
No way.
Yeah. So ITV came to us. They heard about the findings, what we're doing. They filmed the bus and all the rest of it. Yeah, great. And then they was about to put it out on London Tonight, and I had to phone them and say, no, our bus has been burnt down since that interview. They was like, no way. So they had to come back and show this bus completely wrecked. So that really kind of
big setback, surely.
Massive setback. It was something else. This is like all 2018. So 2018 begins in a way where 2017 there was all this progress happening. Then 2018, first my son gets injured in a vicious knife attack, which again hits us hard as a family. We're like, wait, I work within this sector, and it's actually impacted my child. Do you know what I mean? So there was a slowdown in work, because then as you got to support your child first and foremost, but also you have to support yourself in that I work within a solution-based field, working with many young people. Any of these young people I work with could have potentially been responsible for what's happened to my son, or may not know. What do you do with that information? If someone says to you, oh, we know what's happened, what do you do with that information where, you feel that, well, now I'm the victim of this thing. Do you know what I mean? And now the young people that I'm working with, they're the perpetrators. So how can you carry out a service? How do you safeguard that young person knowing that you're angry still for what's happened to your own child? So there was a lot of things I had to process. There's a lot of things I had to go through internally to come through the other side of that, to even think, okay, you know what? I'm actually ready to safeguard young people, give them a service, and actually be at the mercy of young people. Do you know what I mean? Like, and just really communicating that sense again. So there was that, firstly, at the beginning of the year, 2018. And then when I was just ready, that's when in March we started to get out, bus is set on fire. So then it's like, you know what I mean? Like, Allah, are you telling me that this is it? Do you know what I mean? Are you trying to give me a sign that it's your home, it's your business? Like, is this the sign for me to just walk away from this entirely? So again, I was not too sure if I wanted to continue doing this community work. And then we went for an award. We was nominated for an award with an organization called LEAP, Bloomberg Building. Ironically called, was it Fire? Something Fire, I'll have to remember. But Ironic Fire was in the title anyway. So we've gone for this nominated award, and I just stayed thinking, okay, cool. I looked at a lot of the nominations for a lot of the young people that were involved, and there was some fantastic work going on. And obviously we saw our work and we won the award, and I was completely taken back. Didn't even think we was going to win anything. So then, I made a speech and spoke about the fact that our bus had been set on fire and we haven't got a business. Being in the Bloomberg building, there was one or two beneficiaries there. This was the Miriam Investment Group. They heard about the story and said, right, come and visit us. We want to get you a new bus. So that bus is the one that's there today. So once that happened, we were ready again. Do you know what I mean? Kind of reinvigorated, ready to open our doors. And
I suppose those like periods of, you don't wish them obviously, but those periods of real difficult strain and resistance, if you do pull through them, I'm guessing that's given you an amazing amount of strength ever since to sort of keep going.
A lot of resilience, as you said, and it's important to reflect on these periods, because a lot of people would just see the bus and just not understand that so much has gone into this. We've got arson, and we've got family that have been impacted by serious youth violence. Do you know what I mean? Then you've got your own growing pains. You know, you're not really earning in terms of the work that you're doing, but your work's well known, but you're not really making any money at all from it. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so many things that you have to navigate to really test whether you want to stay in that space in the first place. Do you know what I mean? So there was a lot of wins, losses, but throughout all of it, it's just the growth of the charity in that sense. So once the new bus came, and, you know, full bells and whistles, the SEC group down in Kent did a fantastic job in redeveloping, redesigning the bus and whatnot. We were ready. So after that point, you know, we really going from community to community and wowing people, you know, young people. I mean, the London bus is a really feature point for London. When you think about London, you know, Beefeaters, Queen's Guards and all of that stuff, telephone boxes, post boxes, Buckingham Palace, black taxis, red buses. It's a real feature point for the UK. So having that as a safety hub and a provision that goes around, which introduces them to music, full recording studio, mentors on board, men and women mentors, etc., and gaming studios, etc. Just having that going around, again, it's a throwback to the 80s. Because when I was growing up, we had a library bus that used to come around and drive into every community. You went on there, you chose your book at that point, mega mog for me, massive. But you chose your books, and, you know, they had the little laser feature guns at that point, which was like, wow, they got the laser guns kind of thing. So reading the tags, and you take your books off, the library returns the following week. So I've always seen that you relive things without remembering that you're reliving it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's just when I saw an old library bus, and I was like, hold on. And I was like, oh, wow, these are the things that you're exposed to when you're young. And then when you regurgitate the same ideas, but in a new way, when you're older, do you know what I mean? So safety, bus, vehicles, doing the same thing as an older person. But it just means that we're able to get into different spaces. We're non-partisan. We can go into any area, especially if there's conflict, especially if there's, you know, things happening in that area. Our bus can get into that area and work with young people. So it's just the alternative policing. It's the way we police our communities in a different way, where young people want to engage with our truck. Young people want to come on board. Do you know what I mean? They want to create music. And then there's the safety element, which is you've got mentors that are on board. And the mentors, you know, speak and form relationships with young people. Yeah. And not only do they grow and develop their ideas around what's happening in terms of youth safety, but then they're also able to impart from experience better ways to handle different situations. So there's this constant synergy and relationship that's being formed on this bus. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just a bus, right? No, there's so many more things that happen. So, and that's enabled us to go all around London, working with different councils, different schools. So we do early intervention work, working with schools where young people are more disproportionately excluded. Our buses go into that space and work with young people. And then it's the other strand of it is diversionary work. So young people who are known to police, known to social services, and might be caught up in a certain lifestyle and going down a certain route. Cool, they get referred to our program as well. So now we straddle both sides of the fence, working with younger people in schools, older people outside of schools, and then supporting parents. Because ultimately, if you're not working with the parents, you're not working with the child. So it's that complete holistic approach that we have. That it all takes place just through a bus.
Take me onto the bus then, and I think in particular, I'm interested in just talking about some of the challenges in particular that have happened over the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
And this goes back to what we were talking about right at the start in terms of genre progression, right? Hip hop has changed. The nature of a young person stepping into a studio and rapping and then stepping out of it, and then their music going out into the world. That whole interplay between them and the world through their music has completely changed. Obviously, as a result of technology, as a result of social media. You're presumably navigating this every single time you step on the bus. I'm interested in some of that. Like, how do you see those changes? How are you navigating them safely?
I think we're segueing into drill somewhat. But if we look at what's happened with music in particular, it's hip hop. If we look at the journey of hip hop, let's just say, because this is where I think we're measuring some of the cues that we mentioned, right? So hip hop's gone from informative artwork, community, don't push me, I'm close to the edge, this is what's happening in my community, you know, the journalists of their community, right? With a little bit of let's have fun thing going on. That morphs into hyper-capitalism within the whole 90s heyday of rap, 2000s, where it's all about Cristal, buying vehicles, you know, get jewelry, get money. And we can see more of a degradation in lyrics. We can see the hyper-masculinity within gangster rap taking more of a lead from NWA that then morphs into Snoop and etc. Right? So we can see where it's gone more. Some elements have introduced a gangster element into hip hop as well, there was always a flirt with that throughout the 90s when, you know, people would say Rockefeller Records, or do you know what I mean? Like I remember Nas going down that slightly mafioso route as well, you know, little playing casino and stuff like that. So there's always been that affiliation with New York crime bosses, etc., and it's fused into the music. So that kind of gangsterization of music is elevated and promoted by record labels, ultimately. So even if you wanted to make a music full of message, KRS-One, these guys start to fade out during this point and become more backpack rappers. The message element of hip hop's morphed into money element now. Forget message, forget morality, money. That's all that counts. For that, you got the crashes of the 2000s, financial crashes all around the world. You know, people are losing their homes, subprime closures, etc. Right? And now it morphs into more community violence, and that's the rise of drill. Do you know what I mean? So we now have young people that can voice their music and get it straight to consumer demand. Don't have to go through the record labels. No. YouTube's here. We've got a brand new platform where we can put things up immediately, telling people what's going on, and Elements is glorifying what's going on. And now there's a whole new subgenre of music that's come into play, which is drill. So where is our position, I suppose, on some...
Yeah. Where's your position? But also, like, to speak to it directly, like, I've spent a lot of time as a youth worker in music studios and have come across these moments where you, as a supervisor for young people who are rapping about their life, that you know is maybe the only chance they get to express themselves about that experience that they've had. But on the other side of it, it is also a big capacity for them to exaggerate and lie and talk about something that their friend's done or that they've seen or heard about. And that blurred line in between those two experiences, I find it's really hard to draw that line in the studio. And I'm guessing that you come across that quite a lot because there's lots of safety elements to it. There's the young person who's like talking about something traumatic that they've experienced. How do you then, you know, what's the aftercare for that? And how do you make sure that they're being looked after? But then there's also, where is that music going afterwards? And is that provoking? How are you ensuring that, you know, you're keeping that young person safe, but also as they step off the bus, what happens after that, you know? Okay. So all of that, it's just like, how do you navigate that difficulty?
It's good that you've asked that. I think there's the personal and there's the political. So on a personal level, I'll say drill's a no-no. Based on not just for me personally what it means, but also the impact of my son's situation, right, where he was harmed because harm had happened from one area to another area. This area's made a drill song about the young person that they've killed. Now this area is looking for anybody to get back their points being taking someone's life or harming someone, but taking someone's life. So this is where the music's changing now, because now there's a celebratory element to killing people and there's a reward for it and coins dropping in the songs, all the rest of it. So now there's a reward-based element in maximizing harm. These young people are looking for anybody. They go through this area, my son's la-da-da-da-da, he's the person that's impacted, right? So I understand from a personal standpoint how drill then exasperates more violence and makes the community more unsafe. So this sub-genre of music, from a personal standpoint, it doesn't fit in the same way as other eras who also lied about money that they don't have, who also lied about the amount of women they were with and all the things that they lied about. But the harm may have been psychological. This harm is visceral. It's actually physically impacting and it's leading to more violence in local communities. So we can't look at it in the same way that we would see early NWA music. Do you know what I mean? We've got to treat this as a different thing, right? Agreed. That's from the personal standpoint. The political me is uncomfortable. Because politically, what we're saying is that some young people, let's be clear, specific, some poor brown and black young people should not be allowed to speak on their conditions, should not be allowed to say what they're going through. That's what we're saying. And we're saying as a result of them saying these things, we are now going to incarcerate and imprison young people who are just in the video. Who didn't even do anything. So we can see the joint enterprise and what's happening with the Manchester 10 young people that...
Yeah, so for context, the fact that music videos, music lyrics are now being pulled into the courtroom and used quite prolifically to prove someone's gang membership or their guilt, their bad character, etc. That's what you're talking about, right?
Alongside Gangs Matrix. Do you know what I mean? Who a lot of campaigners have worked tirelessly to get the Gangs Matrix shut down. Because again, as a tool to identify who's in a gang, it then just was so whimsical. Any young black person who knows someone is now in a gangs matrix.
Yeah.
So again, these are things that politically are making me extremely uncomfortable. I feel that if someone's made a song, and as recent as in the last month, I think some drill rappers gone down for a murder that he committed, and was on a track boasting about the murder, and that's how that murder was solved. Now, if that's your situation, then you made your bed. You have to lie in the bed that you're in, right? So however I feel about that, if someone's boasting and they get caught for it, then you should know these are parameters. This is an illegal thing that you're doing here, and you can go to jail for it. But then, what if that's that said person, and they were just people that were in the video, and now those 4 people, 5 people now have a joint life sentence with this young person because they were in the video. Now, when you see how loose it is and how...
in the court.
Yeah, in the court.
And the stuff they're
from
using.
The police side of things, from prosecution, when you see how loose the evidence needs to be to get, a maximum effort to get a lot of people incarcerated for one specific thing, that makes me politically uncomfortable. And now I'm in a weird place because now I'm uncomfortable with the music personally, and I think it should be analysed, and we should, from a community standpoint, be like, oh, hold on a minute, no, we need to sort this out. Yeah, this is not the way we need to be going. But on the political side of it, I'm seeing young people who are being incarcerated for things they haven't done. Do you know what I mean? But just by virtue of that's your friend, right? So in the bus, how do we navigate that? Is that drills oftenly, from our side of things, used for us to understand the issues in a said community, understand who's at beef with who, what's going on. Also knowing how better we can safeguard the young person and the community. Is there a position where we can mediate certain things? How do we support this young person more? Because obviously there's someone that's might be bravado, masculinity, and toxic masculinity, bravado, etc. But this is someone that's saying, basically, I feel unsafe. Right. How do we ensure that young person feels more safe? What can we do to increase that? How do we get to a position, which we've got to on a number of occasions, where a young person who's carrying a knife, who's not even making drill, he's just going to school, but his friend's been robbed, and now he's carrying a knife. But then the relationship that's formed, the information that's presented, means that they don't really want to carry a knife anymore. So this is what the bus is used for. So it's not just about drill per se. It's about young people who also, some want to create, some don't want to make music, some want to do podcasts, some just want to talk. How do we then talk through and help them navigate? That's the bus, navigating young people to a point of safety. How do we do that? Now, if a drill track is made, the young person then has to explain what that is. Yeah. And often when you have to explain your art to people, it's not a great space to be in anyway. But I mean, if you have to explain something as visceral as, I done this, I juiced up this, and I done that. Okay, so you've stabbed how many people? Okay, cool. Oh, you've done this? Okay, so have you done it? No. Okay, so why? Why? So it's just through that conversation that you're getting someone to actually look at themselves and actually analyze what they're saying and actually look at, well, if you've got fans who require you to kill somebody, are those the fans that you actually want? They want you to do a life sentence. You'll become that person that could potentially be harmed, and they'll be celebrating you being harmed. Is this what you kind of want for yourself? And you have to walk through so many different steps for a young person to actually look at things from another angle. So we've got different parts of our program. Come as you are. They'll start off with that. yeah, I've done this, I've done that. If I see so-and-so, da-da-da-da. No worries. Next track, we want you to make a song about yourself. That's a difficult song to make. Do you know what I mean? So now we've got to do the mentoring and work with this young person. That song for self, it might happen at the 4th attempt of whatever the program is.
Right.
Then they can get back to making a song about themselves. But initially, it's about the exterior. Then you go through different layers of the program. They can eventually make a song about where they're coming from, about their pain or about their love. Do you know what I mean? But you've got to walk through those angles. The bus gives us the ability to do that, and the program.
It's a therapeutic space.
Very therapeutic. Very therapeutic. So we see the trust that's formed. We see how much therapy can come from a young person that just wants to relate. But we also see the creativity, because there's the way you play on words, the cadences, the flow, etc. It is exciting and it is great. But we're just saying, look, if you're putting something out which is going to increase your unsafety, we actually love you. We actually check for you. We actually want to see you do well in life.
Yeah.
We don't want this for you. So show us something else. Do something different. And even if you go from 1,000 likes, but you get 10 people that appreciate the different part of you, they like what you're presenting, work with those 10. Because eventually that turns into a couple hundred. But at least you know you're being yourself. A lot of people are not being themselves. They're being what they need to be to try and keep a situation away from them. They're not being themselves though, you know? So we don't allow drill songs to, in short, we don't really allow drill songs to leave the studio.
Right.
Especially if they're naming other young people and we feel it's related to something. And we've taken that stance from early, from the personal position, but also from the political position of, why would we allow you to snitch on yourself? Why would we allow you to put music out there, which is then going to be used in court to prosecute you? We're going to work with you so you don't do this, so you don't think this way, so you don't feel that way.
Right.
So that's more our position on drill. So to date, we've made thousands of drill songs. None of them's ever left the studio. We just use it to really create relationship.
Makes a lot of sense. I think my stance was always, you got to let it out and allow someone to let it out. But then it's like what you do with it afterwards.
Where do you let it out? Do you know what I mean?
And in terms of let it out of their mouth, maybe in that space, in that safe space. But the padding around the bus is really important, right?
100%.
Just to like kind of come to a close of this conversation. I wish we could talk much longer. But where are we at now with the kind of bus program? I know that you're going through another period of growth. So just tell me about United Borders, kind of in 2025. We're talking at the beginning of this year.
Yeah.
What does this year look like for you guys?
Really exciting time. So we bought another bus that's going through refurbishment. We've just been awarded a community centre, a youth hub, and that's in partnership with Young Brent Foundation for the next 10 years, doing our youth services in Church Road, where I'm from. Exciting again. We've got partnerships formed with probation. We've also got a relationship that's just been built with Oasis. Wouldn't call it a youth prison, call it educational residential, where they've got the remit of working with 49 young people and preparing them for the next phase of development, for some for release, some who may be doing life, preparing them for moving into different establishments. And I think that's a really important one for us to get behind as an organization, because we're looking at long-term change. You know, we've seen that the prison evolving will in, out, do you know what I mean? Same business as usual approach from young people and from older people as well. So we're really interested in this kind of this model by where, how do we actually rehabilitate young people and actually prepare them for life if they've made a mistake? So United Borders has been all about that. So we welcome that relationship with Oasis. And then we're looking at, obviously, Youth Endowment Fund. I mean, over the last 2 years, they've made a major impact on our work, from our reporting processes to our CRM side of it. Do you know what I mean? Structurally, just the amount of work we've been able to do, it's been pressurizing at points, you know, in terms of the way that we have to deliver the work, to record things in a sound way.
Yeah.
But in terms of our practices and how it's made us more efficient as a program, as a company, as management-wise, do you know what I mean? Like, we really, really welcome the relationship and the reporting on the work that we're doing. And we're happy to see that mentoring has been given a big thumbs up from their reporting. And the youth hubs have been given a massive thumbs up, which we know from play centres. Some of this reporting, I think you could have just asked me and I would have told you. But anyway, no, we're excited to see that relationship with the Youth Endowment Fund, and hopefully it progresses to more. So schools, we've got more school contracts coming through, secondary schools as well, coming through as well. So from all of those areas, schooling, parental workshops as well, that we're developing our parental advisory groups as well. So in terms of United Borders, there's been so much growth that's happened in the last 4 months that I'm really excited, and we're ready. You know, spring's here. We're ready to really impact London-wide communities and get creativity, safety, mobility on the forefront all around London.
Congratulations. It's crazy whipping through your journey in that short amount of time, but it sounds like you're bringing a lot of elements that you grew up with as a child. Yeah. You're bringing it all the way now to lots of young people now. So
if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
But, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much.
That conversation was very special to me because I have followed Justin Finlayson and United Borders work for a number of years, myself as a youth worker working in the music space and trying to keep young people safe whilst they produce and listen to music. So to then have that conversation with him about something that's very urgent and dear to me, both within this work and just as a music fan, felt very special. And I got a lot of wisdom from him about the importance of creating simple therapeutic spaces for young people that want to create, especially those that are living in circumstances where maybe they don't have forms of expression readily available to them. The bus that United Borders provide lots of young people, and the services they provide are really important. So it was just like a pleasure to get into that with him. If you're interested in finding out more about the Youth Endowment Fund's work preventing violence amongst children and young people, you can click the link in the description of this episode.